Welcome everyone to reInvent 2025. Hopefully everyone's having an exciting time. It was a great day yesterday with the keynote and a lot of exciting announcements. We're going to continue on to that announcements and excitement with one of the key feature highlights from the keynote, which was around the evolution of AWS Security Hub. As you know, in the AI and the Gen AI or agentic era, security still stays ahead of all things. At AWS, security is our top priority. We believe that everything starts with security. A lot of our customers believe that as well. And to enable that same theme, we've been working very hard backwards from our customers' requests and requirements. So I'll highlight some of those key improvements and innovations in our Security Hub service. My name is Himanshu. I lead the team of our worldwide security specialists across all of our security portfolio. We are subject matter experts who help customers with their security outcomes. I'm joined with two other speakers today, Scott Ward, who's a principal solution architect on the services team, and one of our customers who will be here to talk about how they've evolved their journey with Security Hub and how it's been helping them with their security operations. This is SEC228, where we'll talk about unification, simplification, as well as automated response and remediations in Security Hub. How many of you are familiar with Security Hub or use Security Hub today? All right. So this should be an exciting session for all of you. This is something that we actually announced in preview in June at Reinforce. And then since then, we've actually made quite a few improvements and enhancements further. But I wanted to level set what have we been hearing from our customers and why we are making these improvements. We do believe that security teams face quite a few increasing complexity when it comes to the changing landscape and the evolution of technology that we are facing right now. We're in an exciting time where business and application teams want to go innovate with artificial intelligence, with Gen AI, and you're seeing a lot more modernization and transformation of workloads in the cloud. But with that, what's more important is to not have fragmented visibility across all these teams and resources. One of the first things when I talk to customers about artificial intelligence and Gen AI is security. Security is first and foremost. The first thing that they want to know is where all are my resources? How are they configured? What security policies do they have? So having that unified visibility is very key for our security teams. With the visibility, what's also important is context. We can give as many detections and findings as possible, and I talk to customers and they all often tell us that detecting something didn't make anybody secure. If the detection doesn't have the right context, the time that it takes to go take an action, which is really where the meaningful response comes in, that's where really the security impact or outcomes become meaningful. So we wanted to make sure that we are addressing customers' need of adding the right context when it comes to security. Additionally, if there are disconnected security signals, which often can happen because a lot of our customers use multiple different security tools for multiple different use cases. And if these signals are disconnected and you're not able to connect them, then you're not able to take those response actions quickly either. And then finally, to automate that response and to reduce that mean time to response, there needs to be some normalization and automation with our tools as well as other tools that you might be using from our partners or a wide array of our own security partners that you leverage. So the theme for Security Hub from the very beginning of the evolution is to how to change that fragmented security approach into an integrated and unified security approach. This unified solution now can bring in signals from multiple different security products, whether it's AWS native security services, which are primarily for threat detection, such as Guard Duty, sensitive data detection, such as Amazon Macie, vulnerability management, such as Amazon Inspector, and other identity and access management criteria, or control and configuration components that what Security Hub foundationally was built on as a cloud security posture management service. So from that evolution, we're now bringing all these signals from native AWS security services in addition to our partner tools and enriching that information by correlating all these signals in that unified approach. Now, correlation is very important, and correlation with context is what's key. With correlation and real-time analysis, you and the security teams can now view a full range of where and how a threat is emerging, what path it's taking, and what all resources are impacted by that. So this is something that helps then streamline response and automated response and reduces that mean time to response so that you know exactly where to go take an action. Security Hub, as of yesterday, from our keynote, is now generally available with all these key features of unifying that security signal, correlating all that signal, and bringing in a wide range of user experience improvements that customers have been asking for. We'll go into some of those details later in the session. But first and foremost, I wanted to highlight some key elements. Imagine your security teams are using some of those signal tools that I just mentioned. AWS has a wide breadth and depth of native AWS security services, along with our partner tools where some of the use cases that we don't address, our partner tools address. But imagine you have an EC2 instance and it's having a brute force. GuardDuty, which is our centralized threat detection service, where we harness a lot of the threat intelligence that is gathered by the scale of AWS and Amazon infrastructure, we automatically manage that threat intelligence as well as use a machine learning model to identify any abnormal or suspicious activity. That service will right away alert with a finding that there is a potential brute force attack happening from an IP address or a URL or a domain which is malicious or known suspicious. But that threat alone can't really provide the service team much information as to why that happened. Now, potentially, why that happened is because there was a vulnerability that got exploited. Inspector, which is our vulnerability management service, will also provide a signal and a finding which will tell the security teams that there is a potential vulnerability on that EC2 instance, that vulnerability is still exploitable, and that instance is also reachable through the network and has an open port. Our misconfiguration detection service, which is what Security Hub CSPM provides that value, or the Cloud Security Posture Management Service provides that value using control checks and continuous checks, will also highlight that there was a misconfiguration or a security control group that was not configured properly. These three findings earlier resided in Security Hub, but there was no correlation and there was no context. So what we've done now is unified that and provided customers with one enriched attack path that you can look at and then go into the trends and analysis to identify one risk resource and highlight the severity of that risk by looking at that same EC2 instance and all the signals associated with that threat vector or that incident. This is just an example of how some of the native services are adding value, but the same concept applies for all of the other entities, such as network exposures, anything that's related to network configurations, or resource control policies, or security control groups, as well as sensitive data. If you're having an exfiltration event with an S3 bucket, which is already shared with your business partners, or you intentionally made it open to the public internet for resource sharing, that is a much lower risk with context compared to a bucket that might have sensitive data, which is something very critical and also comes up all the time now, especially in artificial intelligence and Gen AI use cases, where you want to fine-tune some of your foundational models using that sensitive data to provide your business teams better outcome. So that's how some of these correlated events are now adding more value within the unified experience of Security Hub. So Security Hub, since preview in the last 6 months, has further improved that correlation and analysis by using artificial intelligence and machine learning within the service. Now you can get real-time trend analysis within the Security Hub dashboard that shows you how these incidents are trending. It also provides you a real-time risk analysis for your resources, where you can go in and, using that risk analysis, identify the severity of where you want to go take actions. And then more importantly, we've actually integrated the service with some of our own security partners downstream, because we understand that most of the automation and remediation happens where security teams need to go and create automated workflows or send these events to a security incident event monitoring tool or a security orchestration tool. So these are the three areas where we further improved the service during that preview period, which is now generally available. The key benefits of all these improvements allow now security teams to have a unified operations view with an enriched and a much better user experience within the AWS console. You can use your existing Security Hub service console, and from there you'll have an option to opt into the new feature set. And using a 30-day free trial, which has been always our priority to give customers that free trial to leverage the new features, you can now enable this new service right away. Additionally, with that context correlation and risk prioritization, you can define where are the highest severity issues that you need to go address with your security events and within your security teams. And with the detailed attack path and correlation, you can identify immediately which business teams or application teams are using what resources and where do those workflows need to go and act so that your response and remediation are faster and easier. The evolution of Security Hub stays with the same name. I think this is something that we learned from multiple customers. We wanted to create less confusion for our customers. So Security Hub now truly becomes a Security Hub, where we're not only bringing in the previously known findings of control evaluations, where it was a centralized monitoring tool that evaluated misconfigurations across your resources, and also aggregated all the findings from our native AWS security services as well as from our partner tools. But now it's evolved into building on top of that same cloud security posture management into that unified security operations with a simplified experience. If you're an existing user of cloud security posture management of Security Hub, you will still be able to continue to use that standalone service. In the AWS console, there will be a new option for Security Hub, which you can now opt into and right away initiate a 30-day free trial. If you were using the preview version of the service that we earlier launched in June, you will have an easier transition to just click and update to the generally available version with all your configurations and all your settings still there. One of the key features of Security Hub is because it's centralized, security teams wanted the ability to manage all of the AWS accounts across the security operations from one place. So we've taken a deliberate effort to aggregate and consolidate and unify all of this across multiple regions, multiple accounts, and also allow you to have that same centralized configuration that we had built earlier within the service. Some of these details will show you actually in action. So with Security Hub, first and foremost, what you can now look at is the asset inventory. I mentioned, the first thing customers wanted to know is, where all do I even have coverage for my security? This is, again, a deliberate effort that we wanted to provide to customers, is that within that centralized place, when you enable the service now, you can see which all of your accounts and resources in those accounts are protected for threat, or which ones are protected for vulnerabilities, and where all do you have the right risk configurations or the Security Hub misconfiguration detections enabled. With that, as your teams add more resources and as they add more AWS accounts, you have one view to look at your asset inventory and the coverage of security that Security Hub is providing. From there itself, you can easily go in and opt in additional accounts, whether they're prod or development, and if you're operating with a CI/CD pipeline, you can again easily add more resources to that coverage as well. Once Security Hub starts aggregating these findings, it then starts using the underlying AI and machine learning to correlate these findings and in real time start providing exposure findings. So exposure findings are an elevated combination of multiple different findings from our native detection tools as well as our partner tools. These exposure findings are built on traits, and those traits could be either related to a misconfiguration or a sensitive data detection or network reachability, or if you want to know like some of your RDS databases or S3 buckets are exposed to the internet. I think this is a faster way now to go and act on those with the risk and the prioritization that the service provides. This then eases the triage and alerting process. We actually deliberately worked with our partners. One of the key features that now Security Hub provides is that it also normalizes all the findings in an open standard format. So earlier, you can pretty much take any one of our detection tools and export these findings in EventBridge. They are in the JSON format, and you can look at the details. But all of these detection tools could also have multiple different formats. Especially also if you're using partner tools and sending those detections from either endpoint detection tools or network security tools, they're again in multiple different formats. So we wanted to make sure that there is one consistent format, and we centralized on an open standard called Open Cybersecurity Schema Framework. So that OCSF standard helps to ease the time in integrating these findings into downstream products that support that format and also alert and triage easily. In addition to unification and simplification, one of the other key elements that we gathered from our customers was the pricing aspect. You can imagine like AWS being customer obsessed, we're constantly making sure that our services provide the most value at the least cost to our customers. So over the period of time, a lot of our own detection tools have been adding new features. Like Guard Duty, for example, the foundational service was built on detecting threats across APIs such as control APIs as well as CloudTrail API activity and network activity using VPC DNS flow logs. But then customers ask us for runtime monitoring. We added runtime monitoring in Guard Duty. Customers ask us for protection across S3 and RDS and Lambda and EKS and ECS. So we continued to add those protection plans. But with that, what happened is all these protection plans had a variable component, and what customers were asking for is a simplified pricing package as well. So that they can easily predict, they can easily forecast what the pricing or the cost of the security operations looks like. So one of the key elements that we launched yesterday since the preview that you can now experience is the unified pricing and simplified pricing within Security Hub as well. The unified pricing comes with 3 key benefits. First and foremost, it streamlines all of this into a single invoice or a single bill. That means rather than having multiple different variable components, if you want the full coverage across threat detection, vulnerability management, sensitive data detection, and cloud security posture management with the CSPM functionality of Security Hub, you can aggregate all of that now into a single invoice or a single bill. The second big feature which customers asked us was to make it more deterministic, which means rather than always having to predict or forecast how many events are monitored per volume or log events, etc., can we make it more deterministic on resources, for example, which we know how many are covered because it's shown in the Security Hub console to begin with anyways. So we've now centered on pricing those components based on resources. And then the third big component was predictability and the ability to forecast, which is, can you give us a tool that customers told us that, so that I can maybe forecast what that pricing looks like 3 months or 6 months down the line. So we wanted to give customers flexibility and choice, and without tying them into any multi-month or multi-year contracts. It is still a pay-as-you-go monthly pricing, but based on a deterministic resource-based pricing, and it's still very flexible and easy to now use. So that ease and simplification has now also shown up in the pricing of the service. In addition to that, as I mentioned, building with partners and integrating downstream response is very important. We recognize that a lot of you in the room, as well as our customers, use existing partner tools, which is where they go and orchestrate automation and response. But we wanted to, again, simplify that integration for our customers right from the Security Hub interface. As I mentioned, this is all based on the foundation of open cybersecurity schema framework. So partners can automate workflow events such as Jira from the Atlassian suite or ServiceNow, and also some of the other groundbreaking partners who are leveraging artificial intelligence as well as automation like Tynes, or if you're using a security incident event monitoring tool like Securonix or Splunk, etc., you can now easily automate these actions downstream as well. This is the benefit of the open cybersecurity schema framework. The industry has been rallying behind this open source schema, and we wanted to make sure that we are ahead of that as well, and then providing that same flexibility and choice for our customers. So all the findings in Security Hub now are standardized in OCSF format. All incoming findings from our partners are also standardized in OCSF format, and then that makes the downstream integrations very easy. So if your security teams want to send a workflow ticket to the business application team where the resource needs to be remediated, or the security event needs to be remediated, or you're aggregating these downstream in a security analytics tool like Securonix, you can easily now do that without moving data back and forth. And you can also easily investigate those findings, because we also announced another key improvement in the keynote yesterday, which was our CloudWatch unified data store, which again is building upon that normalization of open cybersecurity schema framework. So whether you're using our Amazon Security Lake for log aggregation, or looking forward to in the future CloudWatch unified data store, it'll also make that investigation process much more easier with our partner tools that are leveraging open cybersecurity schema framework. So just to quickly summarize before we go and dive a little bit details into each one of these key attributes, Security Hub brand and name still stays. However, the service has evolved to help unify across multiple different capabilities, such as automated signal correlation, exposure findings, attack paths, and we've simplified the pricing as well as standardized the format of the findings in open cybersecurity schema framework. So this is the evolution of Security Hub. Like I mentioned, you can continue using the CSPM function of the service if you're still using that. It'll be an easy way to upgrade or go to the next evolution of the service with a 30-day free trial, which you can leverage and see all the new changes and simplification in the console for yourself. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Scott to come in and go into the details of some of these. Thank you.
Thanks, Himanshu. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for your time again. Scott Ward, I'm a principal solutions architect. I work on the security services product team. So this is the team that owns Security Hub, as well as other centralized security services focused on threat detection and vulnerability response. I work a lot with customers to help them understand how our services work, and work with our product managers and engineering teams on figuring out what are the things we should be building and making sure that what we build is actually going to be useful for our customers at the end of the day. So I want to talk a little bit more about some key features of the new Security Hub experience and the benefit and the value that they add, some things that we've had since the preview and some things that we've added as part of the general availability. First one I want to talk about is the exposures that Himanshu mentioned before. We've got a lot of feedback from our customers that our other security services give them a lot of information, a lot of findings around what's going on in their environments, but it can be a little bit overwhelming and trying to figure out what are the most important things in all of those findings and figuring that out. And customers have had to invest in finding additional people or building their own tooling to kind of wade through that and figure out what are the things I should be focusing on. So with exposures, what we're working on is the exposures are meant to be that prioritization that helps you figure out where should I be spending my time and who should I be giving these things to my team to work on. So in the Security Hub console, you will have exposures that are available to you. They have their own widgets that help you understand the summary of exposures. It's got its own dashboard and its own experience within the Security Hub console. So I want to talk a little bit more about how exposures actually work and how we view exposures. So an exposure we look at is some sort of weakness that exists, whether it be in a particular software package, in a configuration of your resource, or some other security best practice that we think isn't being followed that would put that particular resource at risk from being accessed or compromised or taken over by an external entity. So the way these work here is you have the Security Hub service centrally, and then it's going to be receiving findings from the various sources. So we've got Inspector for vulnerabilities and network reachability, Guard Duty for threats, Security Hub CSPM for cloud posture, Amazon Macie for sensitive data. And then we also get information that powers that resource inventory that Himanshu talked about earlier. We collect that information. We use that to help better understand additional configuration about your resources and some relationships that those resources have with other resources in your environment. And so all that information is collected into Security Hub. Security Hub then extracts out of those findings what we call traits. These are individual security markers about that particular resource and its security attributes that are ultimately coming from that finding. And so we extract the traits out of all of those findings as they come in. And then we go into the correlation and analysis part. So we are looking at all of those traits and looking across those traits to see, are there any things that are present for a particular resource that would demonstrate that there is some sort of a misconfiguration or a toxic combination of these traits that puts this resource at a greater risk, and ultimately generate an exposure finding. So an exposure finding is a net new finding in Security Hub. It's got its own finding type. You can filter and sort based on exposure specifically. One of the really cool things is that when we launched this in preview, these exposure correlations were happening every 6 hours. So you're in a batch mode, and so you'd need to wait every 6 hours to see if there is any new exposures or any updates to your existing exposures. With the general availability of Security Hub, this is now happening in near real time. So as these findings are coming in, we're extracting the traits. We're constantly doing new correlation. And so what that means to you is that you're going to get insight about new exposures in your environment more quickly or updates to existing exposures. I've talked about traits. There's 5 types of traits that we use currently from a categorization perspective. So assumability, this is focusing on AWS resources that have an IAM role or policy tied to them. Misconfigurations are a trait focused on misconfigured resources. Reachability is focused on anything that's got an open network path to the internet. Sensitive data, just like it sounds, is focused on the types of traits that are indicators that sensitive data has been identified. And then a vulnerability trait is focused on resources that have some sort of a software vulnerability or weakness in that software that could potentially be exploited. When we generate our exposures, we use a severity scale. Critical, high, medium, and low. But there's a methodology that we have around how do we determine what's the severity of any one exposure. So after we've correlated all that together, we've identified that, hey, there's some traits across this resource that demonstrate a weakness. What kind of severity should we give you? So we look at a couple things. We look at the ease of discovery. So how easily could an automated tool actually find this particular vulnerable resource or this exposed resource? We look at the ease of exploit. So how simple would it be for a threat actor to actually exploit the exposure that we've identified? What's the likelihood of the exploit? So what's the probability that that's actually going to be exploited? So we use things like EPSS score, the publicly available score of exploitability for certain vulnerabilities. But we also use our internal threat intelligence that we have around how are vulnerabilities being exploited in AWS environments to help us inform what's the likelihood of that exploit. We look at awareness. So how publicly known are some of these exposures or items that we're identifying through those traits. And then we focus on impact. So what's the potential impact that from a data loss or a loss of service that this particular exposure might demonstrate for your environment. So we use all of those data points and that kind of methodology to be able to identify what's the severity of this particular exposure. So let's talk about a quick example of an exposure just to kind of make sure that we level set how this works. And so the first one would be these are everything I'm going to show here is going to ultimately result in one exposure. But the first part would be you have a vulnerability. So you have an EC2 instance. It's got 125 vulnerabilities on it. But only 2 of those are actually ones that are highly exploitable. So our exposure is going to focus on those 2 highly exploitable ones. Reachability, so the instance is reachable from the internet. Sensitive data, so in this case, Macy's identified that there is sensitive data in S3 bucket, but we've also been able to determine that this particular resource has a role that allows it to access that bucket where the sensitive data has been identified. So a compromise of that particular resource may present a risk to that sensitive data as well. And then in this case, we also have a misconfiguration of an EC2 instance using instance metadata version 1, which is no longer a best practice because we have version 2 of instance metadata that has a lot more security features built into it. So the combination of all of those traits would result in one particular exposure finding. So along the way, as we've evolved from the preview that we announced in June of Security Hub to going generally available yesterday, we've enhanced how we're using exposures and the types of signals that we are using to generate some exposures. So some interesting things that we're also adding and using in our exposure correlation now is end-of-life operating systems. So from Amazon Inspector, we'll actually get findings that you're using software operating systems that have an end of life on them, which presents a risk because those vendors are no longer going to be offering security patches related to that. So we'll actually use that as another signal in potentially generating an exposure. Malicious software packages. So Inspector has a really cool new capability where it can actually identify if you have installed software packages that have malicious code in them. So there's been a lot of trends lately where from a supply chain perspective, certain repos like NPM have been compromised and malicious software has been injected into those repositories, and we're helping to identify when you have those types of risks present, and we use that as a part of exposures. Malicious files. This is actually based on guard duty. So if you are using guard duty, their EC2 malware protection, or the runtime monitoring feature, if we're getting findings from guard duty that malware has been identified on an EC2 instance, or that runtime monitoring has actually found that you've executed a known malware file, we'll use those as traits and signals as part of our exposure. So you think about this exposure example I gave you here, where we said, hey, you've got vulnerabilities that are highly exploitable, you've got an internet reachable instance. Now we're also able to say, hey, you've got some malware also being executed on that instance. There could be a relationship here. It could raise that priority. And then we're also bringing in signals around guard duty around brute force attempts. So once again, think about that exposure. If we're also now able to tell you, not only is this exposure present, but we're also seeing that somebody's trying to brute force their way into that particular resource. Just another signal to help you with prioritization and your remediation approach. So some benefits from exposures real quick. We prioritize those findings, so we're trying to give you the most impactful things to be able to focus on first. Low operational overhead. You don't have to invest your resources in going through and doing this correlation and figuring out what are these combinations. We're doing that for you. Intelligent approach, so we're putting a lot of thought into how we do this. We're trying to apply AWS best practices wherever we can to this. Internal and external threat intel, so we're using a combination of various sources of threat intel to help us inform how we generate those exposures and what's the severity of those. And then automated reasoning. So for the network reachability, we're using automated reasoning to give us a math-based answer on is this resource actually accessible from the internet or not. So once we've generated that exposure, the other key thing that goes with exposures is we give you an attack path. So we help you understand what's the path that a malicious actor would actually take to be able to interact with and access this resource. And so that attack path is a visual representation that you can look at or you can show to the owner of a particular resource and say, here's the complete configuration. Here's where we might need to be able to take a step to be able to remediate or reduce this particular exposure. So a very powerful visual element around what is this exposure and what does it mean from a path perspective. So next thing I want to talk about is the simplified enablement. And so as you've probably noticed by now, Security Hub is powered by a lot of different AWS security services. And so you can certainly go in and turn on and enable each one of those services and configure that. It can be a challenge to be able to invest all your time to be able to configure and manage those. And so we've worked on Security Hub of simplifying that enablement process so you can do it all directly from the Security Hub service. So let's just imagine you're a brand new customer. You aren't using our security services today. You're using AWS organizations. You've got an organizations management account. You've got member accounts. You've got regions that you're running in. And so what we've done with the simplified enablement here is that we've actually set it up so across those different security services, Security Hub, Guard Duty, Security Hub CSPM, and Inspector in this case, the steps you would take. You would go into your organization management account, your very top level account of your org. You would go to Security Hub. You would configure a policy that allows your delegated administrator to be able to manage the configuration across all the member accounts. And they're done in that account. You don't need to actually go back in there, probably ever again for Security Hub. You then go in and you've picked a delegated administrator account as part of that as well. So now you have a delegated administrator account for Security Hub. And at that point, you can actually then say, okay, I want to turn on the other security services. Security Hub will go in and assign a delegated administrator across the rest of those services for you. And then it will actually enable those security services across the member accounts that you've chosen for your organization. And it will actually go in and enable those services and their features across all of the regions that you've chosen. And then, if you want to be able to centralize and be able to view all of your findings from your delegated administrator account in one region, you can also enable region aggregation as part of this, which would centralize all of your security findings in one specific region. So now you have the ability to go into a single account, your delegated administrator account, and a single region to be able to view all of your security findings across all your different security services, your accounts, and your regions. So a couple things I want to call out here is if you're already using Guard Duty, Inspector, Security Hub CSPM, leave it on. We will inherit all the configuration you already have to be able to feed findings in and use Security Hub. You don't have to turn anything off. You don't have to do anything different for that. But you can also use what's there in Security Hub to continue to manage that configuration and enhance it or roll it out across additional accounts or regions. So it's there to work with what you have already, or you can use it to start from scratch if you're not using these services today. So the way we do this is in Security Hub, we have a configuration catalog that you can actually go in and visit. So there are a couple different options. You've got the, sorry, I just cut off there a little bit there, but there's a Security Hub Essential that will basically cover all of the different security services and features I mentioned. There's also ones focused on threat analytics, vulnerability analytics, or posture management. And so you can kind of pick which one works best for you. And then once you're actually in the configuration console, you can see you give it a name and a description, but then we have the security capabilities. So in this case, I've chosen the full Security Hub Essential one. So we're listing out all the posture management, vulnerability management, threat analytics, and posture management stuff that you can do there. By default, we will just select everything for you. You then have the ability in the account section to choose, I want you to enable this across all of my accounts, or you can actually go to an organization tree and say, I want these specific accounts or these specific organizational units enabled. And then the region section, you can either choose all regions, or you can choose specific regions that you want enabled. So we give you a lot of flexibility around how you configure this and roll it out, maybe in a proof of concept, and then continue to evolve it into additional parts of your organization. More specifically, that security capabilities, you also have the ability to customize that. So if you're like, okay, we're going to turn on some capabilities, but maybe we want to not turn on some of these. You have that ability to kind of manage that and maybe evolve into that once again over time. Key thing I'll call out here, let's say you're using Guard Duty already and you use runtime monitoring, but you've unchecked runtime monitoring here. For whatever reason, you don't want to have it linked in. We don't turn off runtime monitoring in Guard Duty for you. We will honor the configurations you have in your lower environments if it's already on. But we will use, if you weren't using it and you checked it, we would use that as a signal to turn that on in your services. And you can also, if you choose to, still go to those individual services and manage that configuration separately, but we're giving you more of a centralized way to do that. We also give you visibility around that configuration. So we have an account coverage dashboard, the one on the right there, that helps you understand across all of your accounts where Security Hub's enabled, what's your coverage across each of those security services, and then at the individual account level, what's your coverage. We also have a widget that will be available in the summary dashboard that actually helps you quickly understand what's your coverage across each of these. So it helps you identify where you might have a coverage gap, maybe where you're trying to do a burn down to be able to get to full coverage, or where there's maybe some areas where something got turned off or misconfigured. So you have that visibility now. Okay, the last thing I want to highlight here real quick is the trends feature. So we added some new functionality to be able to give customers more insight into what's going on in their environment versus just a point in time. So there's now a new executive tab that exists in the Security Hub console where we will give you an initial trends overview, which is really cool because you can go in and see counts that are a particular point in time of how much do I have from a threats finding, exposure findings, number of resources, but then I can see period over period. How has this changed day over day, week over week, month over month? How has that number changed? And then we give you widgets focused on the trends that will go from 5 days all the way up to 1 year as far as the time frame that you can investigate. So across threats, across exposures, across active resources, you have the ability to create more like the upper level view or take a management type view of how are we doing over time? Are we seeing improvement or not in these particular spaces? So some very powerful items to help you in better understanding what's our overall security posture and how are we doing related to our security goals. Okay, thank you for your time on that. I'm going to hand it over to Lee from Awesome, and let's hear about their experience with the Security Hub service. Thanks, Lee.
All right, thank you, Scott. Good morning and welcome. I'm here to walk you through our journey with Security Hub at Awesome. For those of you who might not know our parent name, you likely know our brands, SmugMug and Flickr. My name is Lee Lazan, and I've been a site reliability engineer at Awesome for the last 4 years as of Monday. And before that, I spent the last 20 years working in financial services. There it is. I love our mission statement at Awesome, building a better world through the power of photography. At SmugMug, we focus on helping photographers run their businesses, sharing their customers' most cherished memories. At Flickr, we're all about helping photographers share, learn, and grow their art with the world. A critical pillar of our mission is trust. We have to keep our users' photos safe. Earlier this year, we had the unique opportunity to preview the new Security Hub. And I want to share what that experience looked like for us. So we have 19 years of building on AWS. That's 19 years of experiments that became production, quick fixes that became permanent, and a continuously evolving architecture. We needed a way to identify and prioritize any potential risks. We already had findings coming in through multiple sources and tools. We had GuardDuty, Security Hub, CSPM, Inspector, Config, CloudTrail, and third-party tools. But we didn't have any correlation between these findings. There was no context. Without that, it was hard to prioritize and route findings. It was hard to route findings to appropriate teams. I was spending a lot of time doing the initial research on findings before I could even get anyone else involved. Once a finding from these tools was assigned, it wasn't user-friendly to do the research on what we needed to do to fix that finding. We had a major visibility problem, especially as our teams and responsibilities naturally shift over time. So why Security Hub? First and foremost, Security Hub is an AWS tool. It's an AWS service. It naturally integrates with all the other tools that we're already using. But it's not just about gathering data, it's about taking action. We needed the ability to send notifications directly to Jira or Slack. This allows us to prioritize our work. Instead of a fire hose of alerts, we can identify which items are critical for us specifically and route them accordingly. We weren't able to take advantage of unified enablement in our preview, but I'm really excited about this. I had previously done the work to enable GuardDuty, Inspector, Security Hub CSPM, and related security tools across our accounts and regions. This was not an easy task. The ability to enable these tools from a single source with bundled pricing sounds awesome. And then let us view all these findings in one central place. One of my favorite features of AWS Inspector specifically is the software bill of materials. It gives us a overview of all of the software in our AMIs and containers. This gives us a great view. Now with Security Hub, we get resource inventory of everything. I'm able to generate my own reports against this data, and it is essential in researching issues. If there's a fatal or critical risk finding, we want to know right now. With near real-time risk analytics, we can trust that these findings are making it to us in a timely manner, but only the findings that are impactful. When I originally set up automations with Inspector, I just got flooded with tickets. Adding notifications across each of the AWS security tools is cumbersome, requires maintenance, and a new system to learn each time. I love that I get findings in one place with one set of automations. So this is what our workflow looks like. On the left, you have our inputs. We aren't just looking at one signal. We're ingesting findings from GuardDuty, from Security Hub CSPM, and Amazon Inspector. In the past, we had to log into each console for each service. Now it flows into Security Hub as our single pane of glass. But this is the key. Single pane of glass is useless if no one is looking at it. We didn't want our security team to just stare at a dashboard all day. And that's where the automations come in. We realized that if a finding sits in Security Hub, it's just data. When it moves to Jira, it becomes a task. We built automation that evaluates these findings in real time. It filters out the noise, the low priority stuff that usually causes alert fatigue, and identifies the signals that matter to us most. Crucially, we didn't want to just dump these tickets into a generic security bucket. That's where tickets go to die. Instead, we route them directly to the teams that own the infrastructure. If it's an EC2 software vulnerability, it goes to the software packaging team. If it's an S3 misconfiguration, it goes to the infrastructure team. Security Hub acts as a self-service portal for teams working on these issues to do research and dig deeper. And that's where it really shines, is connecting that loop back around where it's essential to research these issues. This puts the agency back in the hands of the builders. They get a ticket in the tool they use every day, Jira, with all the context they need linked right back to the finding. They don't have to be security experts. They just have to fix the issue assigned to them. This loop turns security from a gatekeeper into a partner. This might sound a little repetitive, but the things that we wanted out of Security Hub we're actually getting. So we see Security Hub acting as that single pane of glass, allowing deeper insight into each finding, no matter the source. This is essential for our technical teams, but I was surprised at how well this works for our non-technical teams. We have trends that was just released, and the trends really show what our security posture looks like across our environments. When security fundings are coming in, it's easier to do the research. Not only does unified enablement look to save on our security tooling costs, but engineer time is expensive, even if it's just a simple loss of focus. We're spending less engineer time researching and prioritizing issues, and also routing issues to the right teams much faster. I mentioned breaking my Jira board when I was working on automations around inspector findings. The findings in Security Hub have already been evaluated and allow us to set up a much more effective notifications. So the journey continues. This is my wish list. As we look ahead, we're excited about bundled configuration and pricing for AWS security tools to make cost management easier. We're also looking forward to more notification options, specifically tighter Slack integrations and better Jira grouping to further automate our ticket creation. We're excited to work with the newly announced AWS Security Agent and the new AWS Security Incident Response teams, and would love to see future integrations with these in Security Hub. I appreciate these new features in Security Hub as we build a foundation that keeps our promise to our customers, keeping their photos and businesses safe and secure.
Okay, just to close it out real quick, once again, thank you for your time. You have a lot of interesting choices to make throughout your day, and thank you for coming here and spending time with us. A couple things I just want to highlight just as a takeaway. Remember, we're unifying your security services. So we're bringing that into a one centralized place so you can get the visibility, have the maintenance, and then we're doing the work to help you with more prioritization, to help you understand what are the most important things in my environment. Where should I be, what things should I be using to help people figure out where they should be spending their time and how they're spending their day? and what things might I be even be using to wake somebody up in the middle of the night because I've got the right prioritization. And that we're really working to help you be able to do more with less by bringing all of this together and doing a lot of the work to help you with that prioritization. Here's a few materials you can certainly use to reference in getting started with Security Hub. Reminder that there is a 30-day free trial with the Security Hub service, so you can get in, give it a try, and see how things work for you. Please, we'd love to get your feedback, what you liked, what you didn't like. We definitely use that to help improve how we deliver these sessions. And then if you have any questions, Lee and I will hang out down here, and we'll take your questions off to the side of the stage. So thank you for your time, Mary. Thanks, everybody.